This time on Tabletop Tango Savage Builds, we have the Andorodo, an unholy chimeric abomination of Star Trek and Star Wars, combined for maximum effect. Make it so, Carl.
Savage Worlds, one of the best games to game.
Welcome back, Savages. This is Tabletop Tango. I'm your host, Eric. Please like, subscribe, lock phasers or morph knife hands and push those buttons. We really appreciate it. Yeah, here's another build video, our Savage Build series. This time we're doing the Andorodo, which is my take on using the shifter arcane background from the science fiction companion, which I did, I've talked about in the science fiction arcane backgrounds video, but this is a whole build revolving around that. So let's get right into it. Here we go. Here's Andorodo at character creation. First of all, let's talk about our genre and kind of the main goals of this build. So, number one, the genre is actually, obviously science fiction, just very open. Whatever your game master, you can change the flavor of how the shifting actually works. Whether it's nanomachines, whether it's just like biological, sand, psychic, superpower, whatever it is. So any science fiction, right, including, I guess you could do kind of a low power superheroes too if you're using that. But yeah, science fiction, because we're using this science fiction companion. Our goals for this, number one, is to be the ultimate shapeshifter spy. So we're utilizing shapeshifting for spying and espionage and intrusion, right? The second main goal is to be a melee striker. So when I say striker, I don't mean, this is not something that can really tank that much or protect others. This is about like being able to, do some decent damage, really good mobility and flexibility of whether like whatever environment you're in, be able to kind of move quickly in it and like hit backlines, hit sensitive things. So that's what I mean by a striker. Our minor goal here is we're going to be kind of a phase character. You can build this to be more of a phase character pretty easily. So we'll talk about that when we get into the build. The main drawbacks here is that kind of natively, there's not really any ranged combat, but there's ways around that. Also, it really is truly a jack of many trades, master of very few. So, even though we are using the shifter background, as I said, the main goal is to be kind of like a spy, right? And when I said Andorodo, that is Andor from Star Wars and Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So if you look at Andor as a character, like he's kind of good at a lot of things, right? He can sneak, he can shoot, he can fight, he can hack, he can pilot. Like when you're doing actual kind of spying or espionage in a science fiction setting, you kind of have to be good at a lot of things. So they're not going to be, this character's not going to be kind of crazy good at anything, right? Flexibility is their main asset. And that's what we lean into. All right. So let's get into it here. So, okay. So our ancestry, of course, we're just going human. That's what we always do for these build videos. Human's always a strong choice. That extra, edge or is really, really strong. But of course, there's some other interesting ancestries we can choose from, and I'm going to use the science fiction companion for this. So up top is the gelatinoid. You're a gel monster person. It has a lot of cool things going on here. I mean, cyber resistant. Cyberware would be weird for this character, anyways, in my opinion, flavor wise. Gelatinous. This is straight up one of the shifter edges that you can get at season, which we 100% want. So here we go. Here's a seasoned edge for free. So we compare this to a human getting our novice edge for free. This is getting a seasoned edge for free right off the bat. So that's great. You get regeneration. Now, this is a kind of redundant along with the shifter. So when we talk about the shifter, it does get slow regeneration as well. So that kind of sucks. So with all of these, it's pretty flexible to be able to switch things out. Slow regeneration is equal to an edge. When you go through the ancestry abilities, it's like 2 points. So they even say here, the surroundings can be done by trading out regeneration for camouflage, or there could be a lot of other things that you do, right? Just an increase in vigor or something could make sense because you're like gelatinous. But also, if your game master's being nice, slow regeneration is kind of a weird one of like, when does it actually work? How I often rule it is just pretty much once a day. You can just decide when to do that natural healing roll from your regeneration. Sorry. This might just give you 2 uses of that, if your game master's being nice. And then weak, of course, you subtract 1 from strength and melee damage rolls, which is a little sucky. But, you know, because we're shifters, we'll actually get rid of that when we actually shift into other forms. So that's not so bad, actually. So this is like really cool and very thematically on theme. Now here I want to talk about the Mimic. The Mimic you think would be like make sense, but it actually is like way too redundant. I don't like it here. I mean, we have cyber resistant again. We have no vital organs, which is half of the gelatinous edge. So that kind of makes it, that kind of sucks when you want to take the gelatinous edge. And then you have the shapeshift ability, which you're already being a master shapeshifter and other ways to shapeshift. So this is just kind of not great. So I would not recommend Mimic for this. Finally, there's the synthetic being. Now, in Carl's game right now, we're playing a science fiction game, and one of the players in there, I helped make a shifter kind of spy character, not exactly the same, but similar, and he chose synthetic being. And so this actually is kind of a cool, you know, combination. Like you can say that it's this kind of synth, you know, nanotechnology, and while you can't heal, you can still get that slow regeneration once per day, or work out, you know, something different with your game master. The immune to poison disease definitely leans into your biology being weird, right? And the spacer not being able to breathe, again, kind of leans into that, and that gives you more flexibility in the environments that you can operate in. So just some cool other ancestries here. All right, let's talk about our basic character creation. So as you can see, we've gone into 1 into agility, 1 into smarts, 2 into spirits, and 1 into vigor. So I'm not taking any extra ancestry boosts to start. You know, we need that for other things. So this is what our spread is. Now, you know, strength is very low, even though I said we're a melee striking build. We're going to be relying on our shape-shifted forms to actually do combat most of the time. So the strength doesn't really need to be there, and we'll talk about that when we get into the shapeshift power. Skills here, as you can see, there's a lot of skills, a lot of skill points. Now, you notice there's 16 skills on here. I've only chosen to spend 2 of my hindrance points on skills. Why do I have those extra 2 points? Because science fiction book, if you actually look at it, you know, you always should do the extra skill points, even if you're doing a custom science fiction game. They talk about that in the science fiction book. It's just one of those things where there's just a lot more skills, and so you should always use that. Now, this sucks if your game master doesn't, but I highly recommend be like, hey, you know, I looked this video, and like the book itself says you should use it. It's pretty much, it's not even really a setting rule when it comes to science fiction. It just should be a base rule. It just should be 14 points because there's just too many skills to go around. So that's why we have 16 points. So I put 1 into athletics. As you can see, I keep my physical skills kind of low because we're not going to need them that much, but you want athletics for just interrupting out of combat and for some other stuff that we'll go over later. It's always welcome to have. Now, electronics, it's a science fiction. We need to know how to use basic electronic stuff. I do have fighting at a D6. This is just, you know, our defenses when we're not in shapeshifting form, and for a little bit of offense when we're not in a shapeshifting form. We just need some fighting, right? Focus, we want to start at that D8. We just want to start as high as we can go. You know, you could even take this higher if you really wanted to and spend the extra skill points. I just wouldn't recommend it. Again, you want to be able to, you kind of have to be good, a little bit kind of good at everything. So you definitely want this at the D8. Then we have notice 1 raise. I mean, that's just, you know, basic stuff. Again, we want to be kind of good at everything. Noticing is important. And now we have performance and persuasion at D6s each. Now, this is mostly about selling our spycraft, spelling our disguises, spelling our forms. Again, you're kind of a little bit of a face here already just because you have those. You can use them supporting if you want, but I wouldn't recommend necessarily raising it right now that much unless you are the face character. Then you want to kind of shift stuff over and invest more into that. I threw piloting in as a D4. Now, this could actually be considered one of the free skill picks, and I'll go over that. But for right here, I've chose it as my free one, piloting, just because, you know, you might need to go into a ship and use it. And then finally, research as a D4. Or not finally, you know, just to look through papers. We're a spy. We need to be able to basically look through stuff, right? And again, thievery at a D6. You know, you could probably switch the thievery around to other things depending on your game, but being able to pickpocket people, being able to plan stuff, being able to lift things, lockpick, things like that, it's just important to have. Now, as I said, one of those kind of skill points is free, which I chose as piloting, but the other ones I might recommend are shooting or hacking or increasing electronics, research, or piloting. So that's the kind of spread I would do. But you really want that spread because you just want to be able to kind of be good at everything and operate in, you know, urban environments and everything. Now, there's no survival here, so you're not really, while you can definitely scout in the wild and forms will help you with that, you're not really the primary scout. We're not looking at taking woodsman or anything. Okay. For our other 2 hindrance points and our free edge from being human, I have chosen, of course, arcane background shifter. We need to start with this. This is like fundamental to our character. It can be almost considered part of our ancestry, right? So the shifter does a lot of things for us. Actually, I think I have a better version right here. Here we go. Here's the shifter. So it's a focus-based caster. So we use our spirit of D6. We start with both disguise and shape change power, and we get the 15 power points. So when I talked about this in the arcane background video, you know, you're a little ahead. It kind of balances out, but I think it's definitely stronger than just being the normal baseline of what arcane background should be, because we have 15 power points and 2 powers, which normal is 1 power. Very, very small list, but we're not looking to have so many powers. The flexibility here isn't from having a lot of powers. It's being able to shapeshift and use disguise, really. We can take the gifted edge, which is extra effort. Now, it says internal focus. Basically, all your powers have the personal limitation instead of the listed range, and can affect others. This does not grant the limitation bonus for personal. Now, I also want to point out, as you see, we have speed here, which it's speed but not sloth, right? Is personal. Now that could be considered the aspect limitation, but limitations, to actually gain a benefit from them, they actually have to limit you in some way. You know, because speed sloth is already personal, taking away sloth isn't a limitation. So you shouldn't get any points deducted for that. If your game master is really nice, they might let you, but you know, really the spirit of the game, if the limitation isn't limiting you in some way, then it should not be giving you any benefits. So just something to know. So that's the kind of disadvantage of the shifter. And then finally we get slow regeneration, which is just really cool. I love regeneration. Slow regeneration is really, really handy. So really, really cool, really, really thematic. We start with, you know, both disguise and shape change. So really cool. Yeah, so I've taken that, and then I've also taken morph. So morph is the novice arcane background for shapeshifter. So basically, I talked about it again in the arcane background, but it's this awesome, super thematic, super interesting edge that is like one edge. It's like 4.5 edges in one, if that makes sense. Basically, just as a limited action, don't have to spend power points, don't have to roll anything. You can just choose one of those things, and it lasts till you're incapacitated. These are like minor shifts. So camouflage, you get +2 to stealth, +4 to like being completely motionless. This is awesome. This really plays into our stealth, right? And as far as wearing armor and all those things, you can definitely flavor stuff around this, right? Like your, you know, Odo could like kind of morph his stuff around his armor or his clothes if he was wearing. He actually didn't wear clothes, but if you know what I mean, like you can kind of like, you know, provide active camouflage because around your armor, because you are kind of this gelatinous being, right? So really cool for out of combat sneaking stuff. Now claws, this just gives us a melee damage weapon basically whenever we need it, and we won't count as unarmed defender. We can also climb with them much easier. Fleet-footed, always kind of handy to have if you're in an environment that you need to like travel great distances, or you're in a chase scene, something like that. So really cool to add that there. And now this is not the edge, right? So if you do take the fleet-footed edge, this would add on top of that. It should. Hardy, really cool. There's no way to get this outside of being that it's a certain ancestry. This is a creature ability, so this is really good tanky ability, and this is the one I recommend most of the time if you're in combat. If you're not using one of, you know, if you really don't need the claws for some reason, Hardy is the one to go for, because that will just increase your tankiness, and you are, you know, a melee person basically. And then finally reach one. This one's just okay. This is the weakest one out of all of them. You know, very there's some niche maybe things that you'll use this for, but it's the other ones you want to focus on. So really flavorful, really flexible. This just is awesome, and you can always kind of switch it around and really be tactical. Okay. So those are the first 2 edges. Let's talk about gear. There's nothing really important here about gear. You know, just take some basic armor, maybe a vibroblade if you can afford it, or just a basic, you know, weapon. You don't have a gun, so you don't really need a gun yet for shooting. I think the bigger things here is, let me make sure everything's in, yeah. So it's getting some spy gear, right? Comlink obviously is really helpful. Binoculars for when you need to look far away. And the language translator is a big one, okay? Because you're doing a science fiction, you know, if you're meeting different aliens, if you're choosing disguise, you know, whether you know the language very well or not, that's up to your game master. But if they say that you don't know the languages automatically, then this is really important, right? Or just it's really important if you are spying and you just hear, you know, you're trying to overhear somebody's conversation, no matter what language they're doing, you can kind of pick it up. So language translator is a big one, I would say. So just look at different spy gear, basically. Okay, so now let's actually talk about kind of the crux of the build. First is let's talk about shapeshift and disguise. So I talked about this a little bit before in other videos, but we're talking about it now, obviously. So shape change is both kind of the main power we're going to be using most of the time. It's for one, it's both really good for as a spying tool. I mean, no matter what environment you're in, no matter what planet you go to, if there's animal life, right, you can turn into that animal life and blend in with the local environment. If you're in an urban setting, right, they might have critters like rats or pigeons, their equivalent, or they might have domesticated animals. So it's even good to sneak around in an urban environment. You're just going to become a nondescript version of that animal. So the number one thing you want to use for this is to kind of sneak and scout and, fly around or get through like challenges. Like if you're in an aquatic, you find yourself in an aquatic environment, turn into an aquatic animal and like pull people along. So very, very flexible, a lot of out of combat utility. It's also going to be our main combat, how we actually do combat. This is the one that we want to go into when we want to do combat. So the big thing about shapeshifting is, so based on the rank that you have, you can spend more power points to get larger forms. But when you take that form, it basically replaces all of your, you get all of the stuff that in the stat block, but you keep your mental stats and the link skills, if that makes sense. So you keep, if you had charismatic for whatever reason, you would keep your persuasion skill, whatever it's at, and you would keep your charismatic, you keep your spirit and you keep your persuasion, right? You also keep all your edges, which is really cool. But then the creature stat blocks will replace your strength and your vigor and your agility and their linked skills. So here's where we can get into another form and get like way massive higher strength, way massive higher vigor, get fighting that's way higher, get frenzy, improve frenzy, things like that. Like all these cool abilities we now get, right? So that's why I kind of kept those physical stats relatively low on our main unaltered Andorodo character. Now, when you get a raise on this, you actually increase your strength and your vigor die one step each. So that's like a free boost trait, for, a raise on a boost trait, which would raise 2 different things equivalent. So really, really cool. That will definitely add into your melee abilities. Yeah, and so I said, so you can see as you kind of grow as a character, the forms that you are open to you increase in size. That's just how they moderate it. It's not always the best thing to go a bigger size. It's just kind of a general rule of thumb that they use as far as like the potency of that creature. Held and worn items are assumed in the form, so you don't get to use, anything specific, right? And they reappear when the power ends. Yeah, here's all the stuff about here. Okay. You don't gain target power points if they have them or special abilities, but you can't cast powers when you're in shapeshifted forms, but you can maintain powers freely. So if you had boosted yourself before and then casted Shapechange on yourself, you can spend power points to keep those powers up. If you turn into a form, now this is not just like creatures. This is also like other alien types. Now it's not like disguise where you can take the place of a specific individual or, sound like them and things like that. This is, you can just become a generic version of another alien species. It's not just like beast, if that makes sense, which we'll talk about later, really greatly increases your flexibility a lot and gives you a lot of other options. So wound effects, when you turn into a larger character, you don't get the extra wounds that normally a large character would have. Now, as far as modifier goes, you obviously don't get, they've added stuff in, they've improved the power a bit, which is really, really helpful. You don't get polymorph and transform because it's a self-only power, but you do get duration, and this is what makes it. Without duration, I would not make this character, right? Duration changes it from rounds into minutes, and this actually allows you to, have it up for a combat, have it up for multiple combats, and have it up for all those out-of-combat scenarios like I talked about, like scouting and spying, and just keep it up. So it really, really important. Duration is key here, and I'm glad they added it into kind of the basic power. Cool. So yeah, we'll get a little bit more into the forms later, but this is what you want to go to for your combat and for a lot of other scouting. Now, finally, we're going to talk about disguise. So disguise is, it's already at 10 minutes, so really, really good for that kind of out-of-combat utility. This is purely for spying. You don't really get their abilities, you just get their general size and shape. This is really for, like, turning into, a certain character to get into places, or, you can be really creative with it. It's for getting into places, it's for sneaking around, it's for, framing somebody. You can like frame a character. You can use it as a distraction. You can use it to like order, underlings around, right? You become like a guard captain or whatever, and order underlings around. So there's a lot of creativity here, and it's not an illusion. And pretty much the only modifier here is size. You can just become bigger or larger to fit those different alien species. So really, really helpful. It also you should be able to also take on the sound of a character. So you probably have to like see them first to really copy them, but it's there. Now, it says those who have reason to question the imposter's identity make a notice roll at -2 or a -4 with a raise. This is a free action. So, you know, again, this is not the game master shouldn't be always having people like question your identity. It only when you like if you slip up or you say something or you're acting weird or you're trying to distract them for a long time to get your party into position, they might have to make this roll. Now, what is the roll? It's notice a base roll. But sometimes they're going to have you roll, right? To like sell your disguise. Now, this is going to be either or probably both in different situations, persuasion and performance. There really isn't a hard and fast rule. They do say in the book that performance can be used to deceive, especially if you're like acting, right? If you're trying to play a character. So generally the rule of thumb is that if you're just kind of lying about something, not necessarily about who you are, but like, oh no, I didn't see them go that way, right? That would be a persuasion roll. If it's just like the game master is like, okay, you need to kind of like sell your character more or really act out this character, that would then be performance. That's why we have persuasion and performance at a D6. So yeah, this is our bread and butter. Honestly, you could never take another power and just be happy. This would kind of fill you, everything that you do. But yeah, that's the bread and butter of the build. All right, that was all character creation. Let's move on to going up to in our novice ranks, right? Okay, so number 1, we have the martial artist edge. Now, you don't actually need to take this, but I still think it's just a good idea to have. So what the martial artist edge does is it, whenever you're fighting unarmed or with like a natural attack, specifically natural weapons, which claws count as, you get a +1 when striking. And it also does strength plus d4 damage. Now that combines with the claws. So if you're using your own claws from your morph ability, that would then become a strength plus d6 attack instead of strength plus d4. If you are in a creature that has claws, right? Then that's going to upgrade their claw damage, and you're dealing with a much higher strength. So basically, martial artist is a way to boost our own claws when we need to use them, and also boost creatures a lot, both the damage and the attack. Because we can't use trademark weapon, this is kind of the only way to kind of boost those attacks a lot. So when we're looking at creatures, we do want to kind of look for claws, creatures with claws, which does limit us to a degree, depending on what bestiaries you're using. But it will make them much more powerful. Now, I do want to say, and let's go back to that morph edge. Let me go back to the morph edge. There's no hard and fast rule here, but I believe because it's all shape-shifting, that you should be able to manifest your morph things in a creature's forms, if that makes sense. So, if you go into a creature that doesn't have claws, I would probably rule that you could then use your morph ability to then gain that creature claws, right? That would then increase with martial artist. So, if your game master allows that, awesome. If they don't, it's still fine. I still think it's a good one to have here because it just, you don't always have to use a creature with claws, but it will always kind of boost you and you'll always have your claws you can fall back on. So martial artist is really, really important here. Next, PowerPoints. We need a lot of PowerPoints. If you look at the shape-shifting, oh, sorry, gotta go back here. If we go back to Shapechange, right? This table here, this shows you the power cost. So as we're going up in sizes, right? We're talking about 8 power points, 11 power points, 15 power points at Legendary. That's really expensive. And we probably want to put mods on when we do Shapechange, right? I mean, a really good mod there is Hurry, if we're kind of a slower creature. Shroud, if you can flavor it appropriately. So it's really, really expensive, to kind of do that at the upper tiers. So PowerPoints will... We need to be taking PowerPoints pretty much every rank. You can maybe skip one rank, and we'll talk about that in the next rank, but you definitely want to be taking it most of the time just to increase your pool so you can do the bigger shape change powers. Then the third option is free. So, I always like to keep some free options open for people. The ones that I would recommend are skills. We need more skills. Skills are always great. The ones I would recommend are hacking, electronics, persuasion, performance, shooting. You can always raise your agility, mainly so we can take some agility edges later. That will be really helpful. Of course, Alon, one of the best edges in the game. Alon is the one that, every time you roll a Benny to re-roll something, you get a +2 on that re-roll. So it's just awesome because it gives you a bonus on anything you're trying to do, and we're always getting Bennies, so it's always going to be useful. Now, I want to talk about another one, Attractive. So Attractive might seem like a weird one here, but again, talk to your Game Master. It's kind of one of the only few ways to get a +1 to performance rolls. I would say that even if you take this later, it doesn't maybe make sense for most people to take this not at character creation, but because you are a shapeshifter, you could easily sell it as, well, I just subtly change my face to be more attractive, right? I've learned how to do that. Now, how it's used can be very controversial. I think it should be something, how I usually do it is, it's not just that if that character is specifically attracted to you, is if they recognize that you're attractive, if that makes sense. So, a blob form might not recognize an attractive human, but a human and like a Vulcan would recognize a hot human, right? Vulcans and humans, they like to mingle. So they would recognize hot versions of each other, right? So I just think that like people treat attractive people better. That's how I rule it. It's just so restrictive otherwise. But another take on this is when you're using disguise, if you're not doing a specific person, I think it should apply. I think it should apply that you should be able to, whatever kind of form that you're in, right, you make them an attractive version of that form. And I think that bonus should then apply however your Game Master wants to rule it normally applying. Because it's more about you knowing how to make that character attractive. So I think it'd be a really, really interesting and kind of, strong edge here if your Game Master is lenient and allows you to kind of use it for your disguises, which I think makes sense. So that's attractive. The other free pick here, I might go with new powers. So boost trait, protection, healing, and smite. The best ones here are definitely healing and probably boost trait, maybe protection, but boost trait just gives you a lot more flexibility, and we need that, right? Alertness, +2 to notice rolls to sense things as a kind of spy and scout or whatever. You want that. It's just helpful. It's always a good edge to take. Finally, charismatic. If you're kind of leaning into the face side a little bit more, you have the spirit for it. So even if you keep persuasion at a D6 and charismatic, you're still a pretty good face, honestly. You probably want to get that up to a D8. D8 with charismatic is a really, really good point to be a pretty good face without spending more resources on it. So yeah, charismatic can be a good choice here. I've chosen Alon because we've talked about being this kind of spy, master of most things. Good at most things, kind of master of very few things. Alon just really leans into that, and it will help all of our different skill checks because, when we're in that tense situation and we really need to like hack into the computer or take off, from a chase or something, Alon will be there to get our back. So yeah. Okay. As far as some good forms for this level, there's 2 forms that I think are really good. Oh, there's Alon, there's alertness, and charismatic. I had all the things on there. So first one I would say is the Dark Raptor. This is one of the forms that the player in our game took, and it's really, really, really good. It's a size -1. So, you're not going to be getting any scale benefits from it, but still a little bit small. Now, it does have this weakness of sunlight, so it's something that you want to do at nighttime or indoors places. But, I mean, look at this. For just a small creature, right? We have pretty good stats. Toughness is not that great, but here you're relying on your bite claws of strength D8 plus AP2. So now if you took martial artist, that's now a strength plus D10 AP2 with a +1 on the attack roll. You have echolocation, which means that you can get around even pitch darkness. You have pace of 24, right? So you can, and you also have extraction. So that means even though you have low toughness, this is definitely leaning toward that striker build of, being able to fly in, hit somebody, and then fly out of there, right? And if you're in darkness, it's really, really effective. So a really, really cool one to use. Finally, another one, the Bat Spider, which doesn't have claws natively, but it's a really, really, it's very, very small, so really good to sneak around in. You can climb. It does have even flight too, weirdly. And it does have this very interesting poison bite. I mean, you'll get it's really easy to get off, right? It says you have to do a called shot because you have to hit skin, but because you are very small, you're probably getting a +4, maybe even a +6 against whatever you're fighting. And it's a vigor roll -2 or -4 if you hit it with a raise. So that could easily get off. That's a high, that's a very intense negative to have. And then you suffer 2d4 damage at the start of each subsequent round. So not the most damage, but it is each subsequent round, so it does last. So just a cool, like, sneaky one that's in the book. Okay. Let's move up to the Andorodo Seasoned. Here we go. All right. So for Seasoned, let's start with Gelatinous. So Gelatinous is the other edge for the shifter, the other exclusive edge. So the first one, there's 2 effects here. For one, you get the no vital organs kind of creature superpower ability, whatever you want to call it, ancestral ability. Basically what it means is that you take half damage from falling near collisions, and called shots do no extra damage to them. Now, this isn't that strong. It does kind of lean into a bit of your kind of staying alive, right? Generally, I don't think Game Masters do that many called shots. But, you know, because we're a shapeshifter, we might be turning into big creatures. And, you know, it's a kind of a juicy target when a normal-sized scaled creature can, like, attack a larger scale in the head, right? So I think the Game Masters should lean into it. People aren't going to know that the giant, whatever, you know, tiger ox in front of them is actually like another player character that's a shifter, right? So they might go for the headshot because it's like looks more vulnerable to that. So definitely can work, right? It's not the best thing, but it's cool that it's there and it adds into our tankiness a bit. Finally, this is what it's all about. This is so flavorful and so helpful that as an athletics action, you can ooze through grates or large openings as if it were difficult ground. And then small cracks and the like take 1d6 rounds to seep through, leaving the character vulnerable until she reforms. So this is so awesome. It's so flavorful, and it really adds into our being able to be an intrusion specialist, right? You know, screw lockpicking, screw hacking. We can just go through the tiny crack under the door. We can go through the grates and all these, you know, high-tech buildings. They're going to have vents for air or Jeffrey tubes, whatever you want to call it. So really cool. Now, I talked about this in the Arcane Background video for Science Fiction Companion. The athletics roll is weird. Out of combat, I don't think you should even roll it. Like, there's no downside to doing this. There's no power points. There's no critical failure effect. So why even make them roll? And when they do need to roll, like in combat, the athletics is just a weird skill for me here. I think it should be focus, like your shifting skill, right? Athletics is a weird one, but regardless, it's a really cool ability and really leans into all the stuff we want to do. Okay. Finally, we're choosing the extra effort edge. This is the exclusive gifted edge from the base book. This is really useful. So basically, after you roll your focus for activating a power, you can spend 1 power point to get a +1 on that roll, or you can spend 3 power points to get a +2 on that roll. It can improve a critical failure. So this is so helpful for, you know, if we're doing a multi-action like shape-shifting and then wanting to attack in the same turn. Also, just like shape-shifting and getting that raise effect, right? To get that extra strength and vigor. This is so worth it to do that. 3 power points to get 2 attributes boosted is a really good value. So this is just really important to, like, you know, we need to get these skills up, especially if we're in like an espionage situation and we need to quickly turn into somebody before they see us, that it's us and not their like friend or something. This is just really important. You really want this as soon as possible. I just chose Gelatinous first because it's so flavorful and cool. The next 2 are free options. So some of the free options here are the ones I've talked about before. Of course, we want the new powers edge. We add in speed and dark sight to the list. So very cool powers. Power points, of course. If you did an agility raise before, we're looking at quick, dodge, and frenzy, right? If you increase agility before, those are all really helpful edges to have. Quick is good for initiative. Dodge helps against range attacks against us. So we're in a creature form. We can still dodge out of the way of, laser blasts and stuff like that. And then frenzy, of course, just to increase our damage. But a lot of forms have frenzy, so it's not really that needed. And then martial warrior, which is the increase to martial artist. Here we have Martial Warrior, which gives us a +2, and our claw damage increases another step. So if you like Martial Artist and you're using it a lot, then Martial Warrior is something to look at. And then finally, Concentration. Normally I would always say, before you take Concentration, before you take Channeling, before you take some of the other, of those edges, take Power Points, because that's just 5 Power Points, right? And you'll get those back during the middle of the day. So also before those, I also recommend taking Luck or Lucky, right? A Benny is equal to 5 Power Points. And it also does a lot of other stuff. And to have Concentration or Channeling be better, you kind of have to, in a game session, right? You would have to extend the power 6 times in that session to get more value than a Benny or the Power Points edge, right? And Power Points is even greater than that because you do the recharge as well. Same thing with Channeling. You have to get at least 6 raises before it's better than Lucky and getting the Luck and getting a Benny, right? So Normally that's what I would say, but in this case, because we are using disguise, because we're using shapeshift, maybe in a lot of narrative, or narrative out of combat where it might take 30 minutes, might take an hour, right? Same thing with in combat. If we did a very expensive shapeshifted form, we added on hurry mod, we got the raise damage, we spent extra effort to get raise and get that strength and vigor up, right? We don't want to have to cast it again. We want to just keep this up for multiple combat. So that's when concentration really, really comes into it. Instead of 5 minutes, now it's 10 minutes, right? For shape change. So that's why I recommend actually concentration here. So the ones that I've chosen is new powers, speed and healing. So healing, it's great to have some more self-healing. So really, really awesome. Gives us some self-healing. It fits the flavor of, powers in a science fiction thing because we can, just kind of regenerate ourselves because we're a shifter. Now speed is the best buff in the game, hands down. The pace increase is amazing, especially for a melee character, but we're here for the quickness mod. Getting another action without a multi-action penalty is crazy good. I don't have to sell it enough. If you're starting out combat, popping out speed, then doing a shape change on the same turn, just a really, really good way. Then you're just doing multiple attacks. If you have a creature that has improved frenzy, you're getting frenzy on both attacks. Just really, really powerful combination. And then finally, I took concentration. Okay. Cool. So that's my seasoned version of the Andorodo. Let's talk about some of the good forms here. So, okay, first we have the Rakashan. So one of the things with Shapechange, as I said before, is that it's not just for creatures, it's also for other alien types. Now, one of the cool reasons to do that, besides the Rakashan getting the claws ability, so you can still use a Rakashan with claws, it also has shooting. Now, you don't get any of the gear that it normally comes with, right? They also have frenzy, so they're already good with like a claw attacks, but they have shooting at a D6. So this is just an example of why you're not really good at ranged weapons. If you turn to a Rakashan, you could pick up a gun, or your friend can give you a gun. Hey, now you can shoot, right? And there's probably different ones that have even better shooting, or might have shooting edges and stuff like that, right? Depending on the game that you're in and the aliens that you're encountering. So, you don't always have to rely on your claws or whatever. Or you can, pick up a weapon with this character because they have hands. So just don't think about it as far as creatures go, but this is a good one because you can use guns, you can still use your claws, so really, really cool here. What is this? Oh yeah, and then finally the the Springtail, which is in there. Really, really cool one. Has a strength D6 claws, so you're increasing that to D8 or D10 with Martial Warrior. And you have Leaper. You can do a maul roll, which is really cool. You also entangle on attack, so and you have pounce, so you want a wild attack. So a very, very kind of powerful claw build here, form. Cool. Now for veteran and beyond, here's just my veteran one. We'll go through this quickly. I mean, we're going through all of them quickly, but yeah. So what you want to look at from when you kind of go up from veteran here, we're already pretty good at. I think definitely want to lean into skills more, just all the skills I've talked about, just increasing those skills that we've talked about to kind of make yourself better. All the other free picks I've said, all those agility edges. At some point, you definitely want to increase spirit and focus up to a D10. We want to get that up. You don't necessarily have to get a D12, but D10 will definitely lessen, your critically failing and all that kind of stuff. And of course, luck. After we've taken the PowerPoint edge, then you can take luck because that will help us with, getting more uses of Elan, getting more PowerPoints, all that kind of stuff. So what I've done here is immediately taken PowerPoints because we want to be able to get those bigger forms. I've then raised agility, and then I've taken quick and dodge because I just think quick and dodge here is really, really helpful to kind of round ourselves out in combat. Now, some of the good forms just to look out for, I didn't go into the crazy, crazy big ones, but of course, the Lion from just basic Savage Worlds, really, really powerful +1 creature. You have improved frenzy, you have claws of strength of D6, you have fighting of a D8, you have the pounce ability. So yeah, really, really good high damage builds with martial artists and your claws stuff. So really, really cool. We have the Arc Beetle. This is a free ranged build here. I mean, form, right? We get this electricity arc that's shooting with 612, but it does 3d6 AP2, so pretty good damage. So yeah, just a kind of a cool way that if you need to do range attacks, you don't have a gun with you, turn into an Arc Beetle. So really, really helpful. Finally, the Impaler. This is like, I think, a heroic, because this is size 3. Really, really powerful. I mean, look at these stats here. I mean, not crazy, crazy high attributes, but we have claws of strength D4, but we can make up to 6 attacks on a single target each round at no penalty. So for one action, we can make 6 attacks with our upgraded claws. So just crazy. And then you have stab and grab. So a really, really cool one. Yeah, so that's my build for the Andorodo. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you got something out of it. Again, please like and subscribe, and have very, very happy gaming. Farewell.
Savage World, one of the